Story 1. The United States always appeared like an older, stronger brother. Now it feels as if that brother has started using methamphetamine. Story 2. It is like watching Britney Spears go through that shaved head phase. Story 3. Nothing surprises me now. I'm just like, of course that's happening. I feel sorry for the sane people over there. Story 4. In the immortal words of Michael Bluth, well, I don't know what I expected. Story 5. I feel like I am Stan from South Park, watching Randy and his friends mess things up and can only say, dude, in a really exasperated voice. Story 6. The phrase America, am I right, has been replaced by discussions about the weather. Everyone is dumbfounded by what is going on. On the other hand, it is sad that we know more about United States politics than about local politics. People protest for Black Lives Matter in Berlin, and nobody talks about other things happening elsewhere. I am turning notifications off because I honestly do not care. Story 7. Confusion. It's so bizarre. How is that possible? Followed by a ton of empathy. Story 8. I live in Bosnia, in the Balkans. It seems to me the United States is going through growing pains. Story 9. I am surprised that people who have money, live well, and have access to culture still do not bother. I am not shocked, though. My country is even worse, so I am well aware that people often go out of their way to do foolish things. Story 10. It looks like a reality show. It is what you would expect from a country like the United States. Story 11. As an Italian familiar with Roman history, I believe America is showing the classic symptoms of an empire in decline. Story 12. I am getting used to it. I take a quick look at the newspaper, read something like United States police kill a suspect in custody, turn the page, and get upset because construction on the Autobahn is taking longer than planned. Story 13. You are so busy throwing things at each other. You cannot see the mess you have made. Story 14. I knew there were many idiots, but the sheer number is mind-blowing. It is astonishing how many Americans cannot tolerate views different from their own or allow others to hold different opinions. Story 15. I used to be a fan of the United States of America. At present, it is like watching your idol self-destruct live on camera. It is really sad to see this. Story 16. I am a citizen of the United Kingdom, waiting anxiously for our leaders to notice what is happening and say, hold my beer. Story 17. I cannot believe how Americans can politicize everything. Wearing masks, the postal service, and before these newer topics, universal healthcare, free or at least vastly cheaper university and higher taxation are realities in most developed countries. But in America, it seems you can just shout socialism and people oppose everything. From my German point of view, the two-party system and the electoral college are seriously flawed, and even moderate Democrats are fairly right-wing. The recent handling of protesters and of the media, combined with Donald Trump seemingly preparing the narrative that the election will be rigged and that he might not accept it, really feels like a third-world country slipping back toward a fascist regime. Although I do not think this will actually happen, it is frightening that it feels like a possibility. Story 18. There is not a single thing they can agree on. Even basic human rights are debated. There are far too many idiots for a country that is otherwise highly developed. Story 19. As a British person, please stop asserting that your experiences are universal. Many people here do not do their own research, and British public debate has increasingly mirrored American perspectives. Edit. I want to clarify that I did not mean this as an attack on Black Lives Matter protesters. Rather, British politics has been swept up in American debates, and many people cannot distinguish between the two political and legal systems, which are vastly different. That confusion undermines people's ability to live safely and consciously in our society. I do not mean to imply that Britain is a wonderland compared to America. Britain has serious problems, but for different reasons. Story 20. Honestly, this is getting tiresome and sad. My dad, born in 1943 and died in 2020, spent his entire life calling the United States a banana republic, saying that for all the good it did in World War II, everything that followed was cultural imperialism and so on. I always dismissed it as boomer gospel and did not pay attention, but after seeing people run amok in the streets of my own country, screaming about police brutality, and learning that we had about 33 total shots fired in 2017, 16 of them warning shots, I realized that the impact the United States has on the world is indeed tangible. Maybe his advice about treating American media as propaganda, while extreme, was not all nonsense. Story 21. I used to really admire America. The last few years have changed that perception drastically. The blatantly corrupt politics seem to have the whole country in such a tight grip that from the outside it looks like a third world country. Your president lies constantly and obviously, yet he has outspoken followers in the millions who disregard his lies. There seems to be no safety net for the average person, and many people rely on luck to get through life. People worry about losing their job, getting sick and facing hospital bills, and having to save tens of thousands for college after having a child. The police force is problematic. People without even a high school diploma can become police officers, and there are frequent shootings. Gun laws are out of control. Religion plays such a huge role in society that it actually affects elections. In the so-called greatest country on earth in 2020, that is insane. Story 22. Have you tried turning your country off and then on again? Story 23. Roosevelt said that hungry people are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. Obama said, democracy breaks down when the average person feels their voice does not matter, that the system is rigged in favor of the rich or the powerful or some special interest. The 2008 financial crisis revealed to many people that the economic and political systems were rigged against them. The American dream had turned into a nightmare. Low wages, insecure employment, expensive housing, ruinous healthcare costs, unsupportable student debt, tax cuts for billionaires, poor public services, a social safety net full of holes, and crumbling infrastructure. You cannot buy a house, but they can buy a senator. The Occupy movement was an initial response to this feeling, a resurgence after 40 years of anemic identity-driven liberalism of a social democratic, economically left agenda in United States politics. The billionaire class was ruffled and put its resources into stopping it. The first manifestation of that was the Tea Party, an astroturfed far-right libertarian movement that set out to stop Obama in his tracks in the 2010 midterm elections and succeeded. However affable and statesmanlike Obama was as a head of state, he could never drive through a domestic economic policy agenda that would make a difference to working people. In 2016, people were offered a choice between more of the same, Hillary Clinton, or someone who would break a system that did not seem to be working, Donald Trump. Voters in critical Rust Belt states chose Trump. Some of them were no doubt racists and xenophobes, but beneath the hateful rhetoric and despicable antics, Trump in 2016 made the right noises to reach out to these people. He promised, although without any intention of delivering, to rebuild infrastructure and create jobs. This allowed some to overlook his flaws. I do not think he can pull the same trick twice, but we will see. Trump is just the frontman for powerful economic interests who want to asset strip a dying America. His job is to keep up the anger, hate, and division while others destroy what is left of public service provision. The Postal Service, education, and environmental regulation. It is all alternative right in presentation and oligarchic capitalist in substance. There seems to be no limit to how far the billionaire class will go to protect its economic interests, or how low their enablers will stoop to ensure that the blame for the pain experienced by the working class is shifted toward outsiders, migrants, and minorities. I feel that the integrity of the American soul and of the Republic is at stake. If the political system cannot be turned back toward some notion of a shared common good and the public interest, it is only a matter of time and opportunity before it spills into a second civil war. Trump losing the election but refusing to accept the result and leave office could be enough to trigger that. It is a mess, but the United States Constitution itself is not blameless. Its built-in blockages, from the Electoral College to the misapportionment of the Senate and the timing of midterm elections, have made it very difficult for government to deliver on its promises. A country with a parliamentary constitution like Canada would have had single-payer health care decades ago. It is in the government's inability to act decisively for the public good that frustration and alienation arise, leading to what we see today. Story 24. From Canada, your country is having a serious detrimental effect on ours right now because people are importing your politics, both left and right. It is not your fault that we are so easily influenced, but it is still frustrating. Your country may be in deep trouble after this election, regardless of the result. I honestly hope you avoid a civil war. I have family in the United States, and typically whatever happens to you heavily affects us. You are so polarized right now that it is alarming. You have gone from slowly addressing racial issues to making them much worse, and the effects are spilling over here. Anyone who does not agree is labeled either a communist or a Nazi, depending on which side of the aisle they are on. It is shocking. My admiration for America has seriously dwindled. I hope you come out of this. I want to admire Canada's big brother again, not be afraid of it. And no, I do not blame Trump. He is a symptom, not the cause. Story 25. I do not want to talk about Trump, but the anti-maskers really anger me. Please wear a mask. How hard can it be? Story 26. Every day I log on to social media and see the Democrats and the Republicans arguing in the comments, even under gaming videos. It is very annoying, and there is another shooting or riot almost every day. Honestly, America, we used to look up to you. Get your act together. Story 27. I just read some of the comments and I am probably less shocked about the current situation than most. A few things still surprise me. Some United States citizens still defend the insanely expensive healthcare system, even during a worldwide pandemic. Some United States citizens treat being told to wear masks as if they are being stripped of all basic human rights. One of the founders has described Black Lives Matter, the organization, as a spiritual movement involving praying to ancestral spirits, which surprised me because I thought it was purely secular. Many do not see the potential power of strong workers' unions, which could give the working poor a livable income and provide all workers with paid sick leave, including those who have been hospitalized with coronavirus disease 2019. Story 28. Dumpster fire. Hopefully they do not fail as a nation and do not try to take over Canada when they flee in droves. Story 29. Shock. Horror. Anger. I'm in the army. I'm a citizen. I love this country while recognizing all of its problems. I love her regardless, and I love her enough to stay here and try to change them, to help my fellow Americans. I'm an actual patriot, not a nationalist, and I get that because I'm a recovering Make America Great Again supporter. I was focused on the emails. I used to stupidly think President Obama wasn't an American. I wanted to make America great again. I wanted to drain the swamp. Granted, we need to, but not like this. I remember 2016 me letting grab her by the pussy comments, jokes about a man with a disability, the sexual assault allegations, the legacy of ripping people off, funneling money from a child's charity, and everything else about him, a horrible human being from a mostly horrible family. I listened to Mary Trump's book. It was a shocking portrait of a dumpster fire. I accepted all this because of Hillary, Benghazi, Make America Great Again, Drain the Swamp, getting rid of the individual mandate, and gutting the Affordable Care Act. I rode that ignorance all the way through to the firing of General James Mattis, retired. Then I started to read, study, watch, and listen, and it was like that scene in cartoons where Wile E. Coyote realizes the anvil is coming and he can't stop it. The more I discovered, the more I lost friends because I didn't support the president and everything he does, or because I wouldn't fall in the Republican line. The Republican line hasn't been that since Teddy Roosevelt, at least. At this point, John F. Kennedy is more of a Republican than anyone who wears the red pin these days. Then the pandemic hit. According to friends who are no longer my friends, I went full socialist. Why do we not have universal health care? Why are we not paying teachers more? Why are we not introducing universal basic income? Why are we paying companies to imprison people? Why have administrations, going back to President Clinton, separated families at the border? Why can't we balance the goddamn budget? As a member of the armed forces, I will scream until my lungs fall out that we need to cut military spending. Jesus Christ, we are the military, but slowly we're turning into a sugar daddy for Boeing and other defense contractors. Why are we $21 trillion in debt? Why are we $26 trillion in debt? How can we deploy the Department of Homeland Security in unmarked uniforms to snatch American citizens up in vans? How have we let bad police officers go as long as we have? How are we letting police unions basically become the Praetorian Guard of the 20th century? Who is guarding the guards? I'm honestly just lost and shocked. I love America. I will die for this country, this flag, and its people if I need to. But I sit around every day reading the news, looking at the paper, or listening to people talk. Not just Americans, but immigrants and people who live in other countries. I don't know where to start. People expect America to be better. They expect us to build big things to lead the world, because if America isn't around, China, Russia, Iran, and other actors are just waiting to fill the gap. It hurts to hear my friends in the European Union say, "We're worried about America. You're America. We expected more." I'm not hopeless, but I'm lost. I couldn't even figure out where to begin. I'm a citizen, and I swore to defend this country. I will not march against my fellow Americans. I will not do a lot of things people think I do because of Make America Great Again. But most of all, I'm fearful of the blind nationalism that has overtaken some of my millennial generation and the generation before us. America needs help. There is no other country or military that can fix this for us. We need to help ourselves, and I'm afraid that the Karens and Kens of my parents' generation are too complacent and ignorant and would happily sit on the tip of the Titanic because it's not my problem. I'll be gone. Story 30. Brit who adored the United States here. I spent 18 months living in Houston around 1998 to 2000. I traveled extensively and loved the country and most of its people. The United States is in the darkest period I have known, and it is crumbling from the inside out. It is not a recent thing. It probably had its roots after World War II. The United States realized it had the power and technology to rule the world to its own benefit, and it went for it. The golden years of the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s have been followed by thinly disguised corporate and personal greed. All of this is on top of a two-tier, difficult-to-crack racial glass ceiling that in some states is allowed to persist unchecked. The United States is now in a fairly open, rolling, low-level civil war, fueled by an idiot that the Republican Party is allowing to rule because they just want to cling to the status quo of the military-industrial complex. Trump is treated like an emperor, surrounded by family members. Anyone with insight can see it, but there are a lot of supremely uninformed Americans in the Rust Belt, the South, and parts of the North who have been fed the line from Fox News and Facebook that he is their savior. Most of the West is happy to let the United States sink, tired of Trump and the United States' decades of foreign policy meddling. For Russia, it is an old game, easy and cheap social media manipulation which is not discouraged by the Republican Party. For China, they are cleaning up. It will be a fairly bloodless, benign coup. They are the superpower in waiting. Saddens me greatly. Story 31. It feels like a collapse, and I think I'm grieving. It's like watching a great teacher you used to admire slowly become someone I no longer respect. Story 32. The writers of this season seem lazy. They are rehashing the previous Black Lives Matter storyline and throwing in the pandemic, which has written them into a corner. I can't figure out who the protagonist is because none of the characters are likable. At least they have moved away from the school shooting theme this year. Donald Trump is a poorly written villain, and the show relies on his catchphrases too often. I think this will be the last season I watch. The spin-off season set in the United Kingdom showed promise, but it copies the same tropes without any action. At least the Scots are the good guys in that one. Story 33. It's all a very messy blur in which one event triggers another in an endless circle. It feels so devoid of empathy it's frightening. Just look at the issue with the mask. None of us like wearing it, but we don't complain and we do it to protect those who need it. There is a long history of police violence as well. People who peacefully protest this violence are met with accusations of being unpatriotic and sometimes face violence and murder, while others dismiss it as not a major problem. That leads to more protests and more violence. All of this is on top of a pandemic in which the United States has shown the world how an uncontrolled response can fail at every turn, and many people still deny the virus exists. Some say people are to blame if they are shot by police or that they should not protest if they do not want to risk being hurt. The president's remark that it is what it is suggests he does not care, and it all makes the United States look filled with foolish people, which I know is not true. They are just the loudest, and from the outside it looks like a dumpster fire that refuses to go out. This is a shame because the United States is in a position to be so much better. Story 34. America would be a lot better if they accepted RT. Story 35. I keep wondering why the richest country in the world still does not have national free health services. Story 36. I feel for you all and wish you the best. That aside, oh my fucking god, I would be willing to pay to stop seeing Trump articles everywhere, even in my country, Slovenia. I am so sick of hearing about one controversy after another from the orange shitstain you all call a president. To sum it up, it's like watching a really drawn-out car crash that keeps getting worse. Story 37. With the economic divide larger than ever, I do not believe the majority of Americans who struggle to live decently, pay for healthcare, and afford their children's education still buy the American dream nonsense. The United States has become one of those countries where if you start poor, live in the wrong neighborhood, or face discrimination because of your ethnicity, you must fight 10 times harder than people like rich white men. I know there are examples of people who have risen out of poverty on their own. Good for them, but they are the exception. I come from a country where I could become an engineer by spending only a few €1,000s on schooling, and many medical expenses are covered if I need care. Why would anyone not want that for everyone? Now that I am earning a living and paying taxes, I am genuinely happy to contribute to funding this and other essential services. In summary, I do not understand why everyone does not support affordable healthcare and education for all. These policies benefit the entire country and its economy in the long run. Story 38. I am Canadian. It is beyond comprehension to see a once great nation plunged into chaos and insanity, being ripped apart by a disease that is going unopposed and is even supported by the country's own president and many citizens. My country is doing well, all things considered, but I am a bit scared that it will make its way to us. We are protected only by a thin border and a limited border patrol. The American tidal wave could be disastrous for us if we let people through. We need to keep the borders closed to non-commercial travel. I am also a little scared that they will export their dangerous politicians and political radicalism to us. Here in Canada, populist conservative Doug Ford is working together with Social Democratic Prime Minister Trudeau to address the virus in a unified effort. In general, our politics are much more civil and calm. Meanwhile, in the United States, it is protest and riot central, and the federal government cannot even unify itself, never mind the nation, to deliver an effective response. I really hope that in the long term we will not find ourselves emulating them in this area. Story 39. From Mexico, I would say to all the ignorant people in Karens, with all love, you are not a clown, you are the entire circus. Story 40. You are a country blessed with diverse land, resources, and democracy. But you have become your own worst enemy. Healthy patriotism has turned into extreme nationalism and xenophobia, and freedom has turned into anarchy. Also, guns. How are they still a thing? It is sad. Story 41. As a millennial from Toronto, I grew up thinking the United States was awesome. I thought it would be cool to live in New York when I was older. The past 5 years have been a disaster, and I am so thankful to be from Canada. I don't think it is Donald Trump who is the main problem, although he is a major factor. It is his legion of supporters who feel the same way he does. They will not go away once he leaves office. The problem is more permanent than some realize. It has been sad to see the United States deteriorate. Story 42. There is an interesting challenge in non-English speaking countries. How do you translate Trump? If you start with a rambling run-on sentence full of mispronunciations and give it to a well-educated and highly skilled translator, the result will make Trump sound far more eloquent than he actually is. Story 43. From the outside, based on media coverage we are shown, it looks like the country is on the verge of civil war. Trump comes across as virtually the worst living human being on the planet. From what I've read by people who actually live in the affected areas, it's nowhere near as bad as it's being portrayed. If this is mostly biased media representation because outlets are affiliated with one side or the other, as someone in the United Kingdom, where coverage seems less biased, this looks very strange to me. News should be unbiased. Otherwise, it's not news, it's propaganda. Story 44. I live in Germany. When I was younger, I always wanted to live in the United States. I thought it was great. Now, not even for $1 million would I move there. Story 45. It feels like I am watching the fall of the Roman Empire in real time. Story 46. I have been surprised by some recent events and not by others. I share many views with people in both of your main political parties, but I would not call myself a member of either. One positive is that it has led me to examine my country's history with indigenous and multicultural peoples and the rise of groups that could threaten our democracy. Story 47. I think you are on the verge of a civil war, and your political parties are just using it to gain more power. The media is a joke. I have my popcorn. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.